Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're glad that you're watching this. And I know we've missed the last couple weeks because of weather and some other things, but we're back at it this week and we're glad that you tune in. And as long as we've got people watching, we'll continue to do that. Just one announcement before we begin this week's meditation. We're taking down the decorations this morning at 9:30, and you're welcome to come and be a part of that. The more hands, the easier it is, so we invite you to be a part of that. So we enter now the season of Epiphany. And for this season of Epiphany, we're looking at glimpses of the kingdom. We're looking at who we are, who we're called to be, what the kingdom looks like. And we're looking at some pretty familiar and famous different scriptures within our lectionary for that. And for this week, we're at the beginning of the first letter to the Corinthians. The letter to the Corinthians, of course, is, or as you might remember, is written to a very troubled church, a very conflicted church. See if any of this might remind you. One, there is a great dispute about church doctrine, right? Not agreement there. There is lawsuits among one another over that doctrine and over the future of the church. There is inappropriate sexual behavior among the leaders of the church. There is, in general, just conflict. People who are thinking themselves more important. Well, we begin at the beginning of this letter, and it's marvelous. Paul begins in very positive terms, right? He begins not by telling them off, but by telling them who. He reminds them of whose they are and who they are. He begins by calling them saints. And that's important. For the church there that is very conflicted, for us who are very conflicted, to be reminded of who we are. We are saints. And for Paul, he uses that in a very plural sense, always. It's a communion of saints. It's not just a collective of individual saints. And he tells them you're saints not because of anything that you have accomplished on your own, but you are saints because God calls you. God wills it. You are saints for following Christ. And it's plural because when you're a follower of Christ, you belong to one another, right? The communion of saints. He begins the letter just by reminding them of what it is they've been called into. Now, he's going to get into his criticism later on in the letter, let's be sure. But he begins by saying the following criticism does not invalidate who you are. See? Your weaknesses, your failures, does not invalidate your worth. Does not mean that you are not a saint. Does not mean that you are not a follower of Christ. And that's a good reminder for us all. See? That in the midst of this world and all its chaos, in the midst of the church with its conflict and its disputes, that we all belong to one another. And that each and all of us are saints regardless of what yet we have accomplished. He's inviting them to live into who they are. Inviting them to find the freedom that is in Christ. He's reminding them that already, right? Already in your hands, already in the hands of this church, is everything you need. God did not create the church and then leave it. Okay? God bestows upon each of us individually and collectively the gifts that we need in order to live out our sainthood. So as you think about that this week, just think about the positive things. Right? We could talk a lot about the negative, but think about just your identity as a saint and what it means to your living in your house, but also in this house of faith. We'll see you soon.